Hello guys! Welcome back to my channel, a channel that discusses very dramatic movie stories, guys. In this video, I'll take you to watch a very dramatic movie about this story, entitled Cancel the Wedding, Queen Moves On. Before this story begins, don't forget to hit subscribe and like. Instead of just being curious, let's continue watching this video until the end. Okay?
The journey toward the altar was supposed to be the culmination of 7 long years of struggle, sacrifice, and shared dreams for Maria and Ethan. They had built a life together from nothing, or so Maria thought, as she meticulously planned every detail of their upcoming nuptials. However, the delicate veil of her happiness was shredded in a single afternoon at an Alida bridal boutique. Maria arrived early for a fitting, only to witness the man she called her soulmate whispering the same sweet promises to another woman, his secret lover. The air grew thin as Maria watched Ethan assist his mistress in trying on a gown, his eyes filled with a passion he hadn't shown Maria in years. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The late-night business trips, the endless excuses of being overworked, and the cold distance in their bed were all part of a calculated lie. 7 years of loyalty had been traded for a cheap, illicit thrill, and in that moment of profound betrayal, Maria decided that the wedding wouldn't be a celebration of love, but the beginning of Asen's downfall. Determined to reclaim her life, Maria reached back into a past she had once walked away from with absolute conviction. 7 years ago, she had turned down an arranged marriage with Alec Moore, the heir to the wealthiest family in the United States, choosing a life of humble struggle with Ethan instead. Her decision had caused a scandal and a rift with her elite social circle, including her best friend Catherine, who hadn't spoken to her since. Now, faced with the wreckage of her choice, Maria realized that Alec Moore was the only man powerful enough to help her execute her revenge. After a chance encounter facilitated by a minor car accident, Maria stood before Alec, the man she had rejected, and offered him a startling proposition, a contract marriage within 7 seconds. Alec, whose feelings for Maria had evidently simmered under the surface for nearly a decade, agreed to the arrangement, promising to wait 1 month while Maria finalized the destruction of her relationship with Ethan. The battlefield of their shifting loyalties moved to a high-stakes auction at Sterling Galleries, where a piece of Maria's family history, her grandmother's priceless wedding necklace, was up for bid. Maria attended the event with the intention of recovering the heirloom, but Ethan showed up with his mistress, Grace, intending to humiliate Maria publicly. In an act of petty spite, Ethan began driving the price of the necklace into the millions, using Maria's own shared business assets to fund the purchase for his lover. The tension in the room was suffocating as the price climbed beyond Maria's reach, but just as Ethan thought he had won, Alec Moore intervened. With the casual authority of a king, Alec bid a staggering $30 million, crushing Asen's ego and securing the necklace. In a final move of dominance, Alec presented the jewelry to Maria in front of the stunned crowd, proving that while Ethan treated her like a discarded relic, Alec was prepared to crown her as his queen. The aftermath of the auction left Ethan reeling in a sea of public humiliation and private fury. He had entered the Sterling Galleries expecting to assert his dominance over the woman he had spent 7 years manipulating, only to be financially and socially decimated by the richest man in the country. As the crowd whispered and pointed, Grace, his mistress, clung to his arm, her eyes full of a shallow greed that Ethan was only just beginning to find repulsive. He watched Maria walk away on Alec Moore's arm, her head held high and the Buchanan necklace shimmering against her skin like a badge of victory. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. Maria was no more longer the desperate fiancé begging for his attention, but a woman protected by an empire far greater than his own. Ethan realized that his intern and his lies had cost him more than just a wife. They had cost him his standing in the city's elite. Maria, however, felt a strange hollowness despite her victory at the auction. The weight of the necklace felt like a heavy reminder of the grandmother who was currently fighting for her life in the ICU. She had won the battle against Asen's ego, but the war for her own heart was still raging. Every time she looked at Alec, she saw the what-if of the last 7 years, a life of security, respect, and perhaps a love that didn't require constant defense. Alec was a mystery to her now. He was no more longer the arrogant boy she had rejected, but a man of calculated silence and immense protective instinct. As they sat in the back of his Rolls Royce, the silence between them was thick with the history of a decade. Maria wondered if Alec was helping her out of genuine affection, or if Hay was simply outplaying Ethan to prove that Hay had always been the better choice. Ethan, desperate to regain control, followed Maria to the hospital, Grace still trailing behind like a persistent shadow. Hay found Maria standing outside her grandmother's room, her face pale and her eyes red from weeping. Instead of offering comfort, Ethan began to demand explanations for her relationship with Alec Moore. Hay accused her of being the unfaithful one, trying to gaslight her into believing that her engagement to Alec was the reason he had strayed. The cruelty in his voice was a sharp contrast to the sterile, quiet environment of the hospital. Maria looked at him with a dead gaze, realizing that the man she had loved for 7 years was a hollow shell, devoid of empathy or basic human decency. She told him to leave, her voice a low, dangerous whisper that carried the weight of her grandmother's dying wish. The tragedy struck with a suddenness that shattered Maria's world. Her grandmother's breathing became labored, and the monitors began to scream with a high-pitched finality. In the chaos of the emergency room, Maria screamed for help, looking for Ethan to stand by her as her only remaining family. But Ethan was occupied in the hallway. Grace had fainted, claiming a sudden pregnancy complication. Faced with a choice between the woman who had given him 7 years of her life and the mistress who was carrying his child, Ethan chose the latter. He rushed to Grace's side, leaving Maria to face the doctor alone. When the physician emerged with a somber expression to announce that her grandmother had passed, Maria realized that Ethan hadn't just betrayed their marriage, he had stolen her final moments with the woman who raised her. The grief Maria felt was a cold, sharp blade that chewed through the last lingering pieces of her affection for Ethan. Standing in the darkened hospital room, she held her grandmother's cold hand and made a vow that would define the rest of her life. She would not simply leave Ethan. She would dismantle every aspect of his existence. She realized that canceling the wedding would be too merciful, a quiet exit that Ethan would eventually recover from. No more. She would go through with the ceremony. She would stand before their families, their business partners, and the press. And she would use the wedding altar as a guillotine for Essen's reputation. She would let him believe he had won until the very second his world came crashing down. Alec Moore appeared at the hospital doors just as the rain began to fall, a silent sentinel in the night. He didn't ask questions. He simply opened his coat and pulled Maria into the warmth of his embrace. For the first time since the betrayal began, Maria allowed herself to break. She wept for her grandmother, for her lost 7 years, and for the woman she used to be. Alec held her with a steady, unyielding strength, his heart beating against her ear with a rhythm that promised safety. He told her that his resources were hers, his name was hers, and his life was hers to use as she saw fit. Maria realized then that while Ethan had been her choice, Alec was her destiny. The preparations for the wedding of the century continued under a veil of extreme deception. Maria played the part of the forgiving fiancée to perfection, even allowing Grace to continue her role as Essen's intern at the office. She wanted Ethan to feel secure, to believe that his charms had once again blinded her to the truth. Behind the scenes, however, Maria was working with Alec's team of forensic accountants and private investigators. They uncovered a web of corporate embezzlement and fraudulent contracts that Ethan had used to fund his lavish lifestyle with Grace. Every dollar Ethan thought he was stealing from the company was being tracked, and every lie he told was being recorded for the final revelation. Ethan, blinded by his own narcissism, truly believed he had Maria under his thumb. He mocked her in private, telling Grace that Maria was too weak to ever leave him and that the Alec Moore incident was just a desperate attempt to make him jealous. He began to plan a post-wedding takeover of Maria's family assets, intending to merge her remaining inheritance into his failing construction firm. He saw the wedding as a financial transaction that would secure his future, unaware that he was actually walking into a carefully constructed trap. He even dared to suggest that Grace should be Maria's maid of honor, a suggestion so insulting that Maria had to dig her nails into her palms to keep from screaming. The morning of the wedding arrived with a deceptive beauty, the sun shining brightly over the luxury estate where the ceremony was to be held. Maria sat in the bridal suite, surrounded by silk and lace, looking like the perfect, tragic queen. Catherine, her long-lost friend, walked into the room, her eyes full of tears. They didn't need words. A single embrace mended the 7 years of silence. Catherine had seen the evidence Maria had compiled, and she was there to witness the execution. "Are you ready?" Catherine whispered, adjusting Maria's veil. Maria looked at her reflection. The Buchanan necklace was missing, replaced by a simple, elegant piece from Alec Moore. I've been ready for 7 years, Maria replied, her voice cold and steady. As the music began and the guests took their seats, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Ethan stood at the altar, wearing a smug smile, looking every bit the successful groom. He saw Grace in the front row, winking at him, and felt a surge of triumph. He thought of the millions he would soon control and the mistress he would soon keep in a penthouse. The doors opened, and Maria began her long walk down the aisle. She moved with a grace and dignity that captivated everyone in the room. But as she reached the altar and the priest began the opening prayer, Maria didn't look at Ethan. She looked at the giant screen behind the altar, which suddenly flickered to life, showing not a montage of their laugh, but a high-definition recording of Ethan and Grace in the bridal boutique. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the gasps of the guests as the video continued to play. It showed Essen's embezzlement, his private messages mocking Maria, and his admission that he was only marrying her for the money. The betrayal was laid bare in front of the city's most influential people. Essen's face went from smug to ghostly pallid as he realized his life was over. He turned to Maria, trying to stammer out a lie, but Maria simply stepped back, her expression one of utter contempt. She took her engagement ring off and dropped it into his hand. The wedding is cancelled, Ethan, and so is your life, she sighed, her voice echoing through the silent hall. Just as the security guards moved in to arrest Ethan for corporate fraud, Alec Moore stepped forward from the shadows. He didn't say a word to Ethan. He simply took Maria's hand and led her away from the wreckage. The press descended on Ethan and Grace, their cameras flashing like lightning, capturing the total humiliation of a man who thought he could outplay a queen. Maria didn't look back. She walked out of the church and into the sunshine, finally free of the weight of the last 7 years. She realized that the queen hadn't just moved on, she had reclaimed her throne. The legal battle that followed was swift and absolute. With Alec Moore's top-tier legal team behind her, Maria ensured that Ethan lost everything: his company, his reputation, and his freedom. He was sentenced to 15 years for embezzlement and fraud, a sentence that Grace narrowly escaped by turning against him in exchange for a lighter plea. Maria didn't feel joy at their downfall. She felt a profound sense of justice. She used the recovered assets to establish a foundation in her grandmother's name, dedicated to supporting women who had been victims of domestic and financial abuse. She was no longer defined by her relationship to a man, but by her own strength and character. Alec Moore remained a constant presence in Maria's life during the months of rebuilding. He didn't push her for a real marriage, respecting the time she needed to heal. They spent their evenings in quiet conversation, often walking through the gardens of the Moore estate. Maria began to see that Alec's love for her wasn't a game. It was a devotion that had survived her rejection and her years of exile. One evening, under the same moon that had witnessed her grandmother's death, Alec knelt before her. This time, there was no more contract, no more revenge, and no more shadows. Maria Carter, I've waited 10 years to ask you this properly. Will you marry me for love? Maria looked at the man who had stood by her when the world was burning. She saw the sincerity in his eyes and the patience in his soul. She realized that the struggle of the last 7 years had been a bridge to this moment, a moment where she was finally ready to be loved as she deserved. Yes, she whispered, her heart finally finding its home. Their wedding was a private affair, held in the garden her grandmother had loved, attended only by those who truly cared for them. As they exchanged vows, Maria realized that while she had spent years trying to build a kingdom with the wrong man, she had finally found a king who was worthy of her crown. The story of Maria and Alec became a legend in the city, a reminder that the queen always finds her way back to the light. They lived a life of purpose and passion, their empire built on integrity and mutual respect. Maria continued her work with the foundation, her voice becoming a beacon of hope for thousands of women. Alec remained her silent strength, the man who had outbid the world to give her the life she had always dreamed of. They proved that while crushes might last 3 minutes, true love is a journey that lasts a lifetime. The Buchanan necklace remained in a velvet box, a reminder of the past, but the ring on Maria's finger was the promise of a brilliant future. Ethan Lewis, sitting in his cold prison cell, had plenty of time to reflect on the 181 Street second the moment he thought he had Maria under his thumb. He realized too late that he had never known the woman he was supposed to marry. He had seen her as a tool, a resource, a trophy. But Alec Moore had seen her as a queen. The irony of his situation was a bitter pill to swallow. He had tried to outplay the world, only to find himself a footnote in Maria's epic story. He watched the news reports of her success, her happiness, and her laugh, and realized that his greatest failure wasn't the embezzlement, it was losing the only woman who would have died for him. The business empire Maria rebuilt with Alec's guidance became a model of ethical excellence. She integrated her grandmother's traditional values with Alec's modern strategic mind, creating a legacy that would sustain generations. They were a power couple in every sense of the word, respected and feared in equal measure by those who dared to underestimate them. Maria became a frequent speaker at global summits, a woman who had walked through the fire and come out on the other side with a heart of gold. She was no more longer just a hidden wife or a cancelled bride. She was Maria Sterling, the woman who had moved on and won the world. As the years passed, the memory of the cancelled wedding faded, replaced by the legend of their enduring love. They had 3 children, each raised with the values of integrity and resilience that their parents had fought so hard to establish. Maria often told her daughters the story of the Buchanan necklace not as a story of wealth, but as a story of the importance of knowing your worth. She wanted them to understand that a woman's crown isn't something given to her by a man. It's something she builds with her own hands, through her own choices, and in her own truth. Alec Moore never tired of telling Maria that she was his 181st Street second the moment he knew he would never love anyone else. He spent his life ensuring that she felt seen, heard, and protected. They traveled the world, exploring the beauty of a life lived in the light, away from the shadows of betrayal. Their home was a sanctuary of laughter and love, a place where the corporate world stayed outside the front door. Maria realized that the struggle with Ethan had been a necessary darkness to appreciate the brilliance of the dawn she now enjoyed. The Sterling Foundation grew into a global powerhouse, its reach extending to every corner of the world. It remained a testament to Maria's vision of a world where everyone has a chance to succeed, regardless of their background. The Reception TCO program she established became a gold standard for corporate social responsibility, a ripple effect of the courage she had shown all those years ago. The world was a better place because a single woman refused to be forgotten and a single billionaire was brave enough to wait for her. In the final analysis, the cancelled wedding was the best business decision Maria ever made. It was the catalyst for her transformation into the woman she was meant to be. She had outplayed her enemies, outlasted the skeptics, and outlawed the critics. Her story was a masterpiece of human experience, a tapestry of action, drama, and romance that would be cherished for generations. It was a reminder that you don't have to stay in a story that no more longer serves you. You always have the power to write your own ending. As the sun set over the city each night, Maria and Alec would stand on the balcony of their home, looking out at the empire they had built. They would hold hands, the simple gesture a testament to the enduring bond they shared. They were grateful for the struggles, the tears, and the secrets, for without them, they wouldn't be the people they were today. They were happy, truly happy, and they knew they were the lucky ones. The Queen had moved on, and in doing so, she had found her kingdom. The narrative concludes with a final look at the Buchanan necklace, now displayed in a museum of family history. It is a symbol of a legacy that was almost lost, but was ultimately saved by love. It is a reminder that the most valuable things in life aren't the ones with the highest price tag, but the ones with the deepest history. Maria Carter's story is a gift to everyone who has ever felt overlooked or undervalued, a promise that your visibility is your power and your love is your legacy. Thank you for walking this path with Maria and Alec. The transition from the boardroom to the domestic bliss of their later years was a serene and fulfilling chapter for Alec and Maria. They spent their mornings in the library, Maria writing her memoirs and Alec managing their philanthropic investments. They had built a world where the noise of the city felt distant, a quiet sanctuary where they could finally enjoy the peace they had earned. Their children, now grown, visited frequently, bringing the laughter of a new generation into the house. Maria looked at her life and realized that every decision, even the painful ones, had led her to this moment of absolute contentment. She was no more longer the girl running from an arranged marriage. She was the woman who had built a dynasty on her own terms. Alec's devotion to Maria never wavered, even as the decades added lines to their faces and silver to their hair. He would often surprise her with small gestures, a rare book, a flower from the garden, a whispered reminder of the 181st Street second. He was her silent guardian, the man who had outbid the world to give her the life she had always deserved. He realized that his greatest achievement wasn't the more fortune, but the trust and love of the woman who had walked into his life and changed his world. They were a testament to the power of resilience and the transformative nature of true connection. The Sterling Foundation continued to flourish under the leadership of their eldest daughter, who possessed Maria's fierce spirit and Alec's strategic mind. The foundation had become a global leader in social ethics, influencing policies in dozens of countries, a persistent voice for the vulnerable that could not be silenced. She had turned her private pain into a public healing, a transformation that made every second of her penance worth the cost. The O'Reilly Sterling name, no, the Moore Carter name, remained a beacon of hope for millions, a promise that integrity and love will always prevail. The story of the cancelled wedding became a case study in universities and business schools, not for its drama, but for its lessons in corporate social responsibility and ethical leadership. Maria's memoir, The Queen's Move, became an international bestseller, inspiring a new generation of women to know their worth and stand up for their dignity. She was no more longer just a hidden wife or a cancelled bride, she was a global icon of empowerment. Her face was a symbol of the strength that comes from truth, a woman who had walked through the fire and come out on the other side with a heart of gold. Even in her 80s, Maria's energy was seemingly boundless. She remained active in the foundation, often visiting the clinics and schools she had helped build. She would sit with the women and listen to their stories, her eyes full of the same empathy that had saved her own soul. She was the matriarch of a new kind of dynasty, one built on character, not just capital. She was a woman who had lived 1,000 lives in one, and she was satisfied with every single one of them. She knew that her legacy wasn't the buildings or the money, but the lives she had changed. When Alec eventually passed away, he died peacefully in his sleep, his hand clutched in Maria's just as it had been on the day they reunited. The city went into a week of mourning, but for Maria, the silence of the estate was the only thing that mattered. She stayed in their home, surrounded by the memories of the man she had loved so deeply. She continued her work, her spirit as fierce and as protective as ever. She was a woman of strength and honor, a warrior who had finally found her peace. She was the queen who had outplayed fate and won the ultimate game. Maria lived for several more years, a beloved figure in the city and a guiding light for her family. She saw her grandchildren grow into compassionate adults, and she saw the foundation reach new heights of global impact. She was at peace with her past, realizing that every shadow had been necessary to find the light. She was ready to be reunited with Alec, the man who had waited 10 years for her. When her time finally came, she passed away with a smile on her face, her final gaze fixed on the Buchanan necklace on the mantle, a symbol of the journey that had carried her home. The city of New York continues to thrive, the Moore Carter building standing as a monument to the couple who changed it. The revolving doors continue to turn, bringing in new people with their own secrets and their own dreams. And somewhere, in the hum of the corporate ambition and the clicking of heels on the marble floors, the spirit of Maria and Alec remains a reminder that love is always worth the fight, and that the best stories are the ones that start with a simple hello after 7 years of silence. The queen is no more longer moving on. She has arrived. The narrative's resonance was particularly felt in the arts. A major film was produced based on Maria's life, starring an actress who had once worked as a cleaning lady to pay for her tuition. The movie didn't focus on the glamour of the wealth, but on the grime of the betrayal and the internal strength required to stay silent while being shamed. It won every major award, bringing the message of worker dignity and personal resilience to an even wider audience. Maria's children attended the premiere, realizing that their mother's private pain had become a public healing, a transformation that made every second of her struggle worth the cost. The Sterling model established by Maria also influenced urban planning. The city began to integrate more social spaces into corporate districts, ensuring that workers from all levels had a place to gather and interact as equals. The Maria Plaza became the center of the city, a place where business deals were made on one side and community rallies were held on the other. It was a physical representation of the balance Maria had brought to the world, the integration of the economic and the human. The city became known as the most equitable and vibrant metropolis in the country, a direct result of the values established by the woman who refused to be forgotten. As Maria entered her twilight years, she spent more time painting. Her paintings were abstract and powerful, often using dark textures that gave way to vibrant, explosive colors. She called her most famous series The Emergence, which depicted the journey from betrayal to empowerment. Her art was celebrated in galleries around the world, not because of her name, but because of the raw, emotional truth it conveyed. It was a final, creative expression of her resilience, a way to show the world that even the deepest scars can be transformed into beauty. She was an artist of life as much as an artist of the canvas. Alec's memory was kept alive through the Alec Moore Leadership Award, which was given every year to a person who demonstrated extraordinary integrity and empathy in their field. The award was highly sought after, a symbol of the new standard of excellence that Alec and Maria had established. Maria personally presented the award until her final year, always reminding the recipient that true power comes from the ability to lift others up, not tear them down. She wanted the next generation to understand that their name was their most valuable asset, and that it should be protected at all costs. The legacy of the cancelled wedding is a story for the ages. It is a story that transcends romance and corporate drama, touching on the universal truths of the human condition. It is a story about the power of visibility, the strength of an ally, and the infinite resilience of the human heart. It reminds us that we all have the power to be outplayed by life, but we also have the power to move on and build a kingdom of our own. As the final notice of the narration fade, we are left with the image of Maria and Alec as hands entwined, a symbol of a love that turned a scandal into a masterpiece. The internal architecture of the Sterling Moore legacy didn't just change in spirit, it changed in structure. Maria's children, once they reached adulthood, spearheaded a revolutionary shift in the family's investment strategy. They moved away from the traditional power plays and toward impact investing, funding green technology and affordable housing. They became known as the billionaires with a conscience, a title that would have made Alec beam with pride. This transformation ensured that the Moore Carter name would be synonymous with progress rather than fear for centuries to come. The cycle of secrets was broken, replaced by a cycle of pride and performance. Maria's foundation grew into an international powerhouse, operating in dozens of countries where the rights of women and children were routinely ignored. She became a frequent speaker at the United Nations, a woman whose voice carried the weight of experience and the authority of survival. Her memoir, The Wrong Man, The Right Path, became a global bestseller, providing a roadmap for victims of betrayal to find their way back to empowerment. She proved that the most powerful thing a person can do is to take the broken pieces of their life and use them to build a bridge for others. The estate in the countryside remains a place of pilgrimage for those who had been helped by the foundation. Every summer, Maria and Alec would host a gathering for the first generation of children who had graduated from their programs. It was a beautiful sight, hundreds of young people from all walks of life, laughing and sharing their dreams in the very place where Maria had once feared for her future. Alec would sit on the sidelines, often teaching the kids how to play chess, his sharp mind now directed toward nurturing rather than outmaneuvering. These gatherings were the true measurement of their wealth, a currency of hope that was immune to market fluctuations. The relationship between Maria and her daughters was a study in gradual healing. For the first few years after the Ethan scandal, there was a tentative distance between them as Maria focused on rebuilding her life. But through shared interests in the family's legitimate businesses and long, quiet walks on the estate, they built a bond that was unshakable. Maria taught them the tactical skills she had used to survive, but she always balanced them with the moral lessons of her grandmother. She wanted them to be warriors, but warriors for justice. Her daughters, in turn, gave Maria the gift of a second chance at being a mother, a relationship that redeemed the sins of her past. As the years turned into decades, the story of the queen who moved on became a case study in sociologists' lectures about the power of environmental change over biological destiny. The twins Avery and Taylor represented two paths that had been cruelly intersected by their parents' past. While the loss of their grandmother remained a quiet ache in Maria's heart, she used the grief to fuel her work for family safety. She established the Carter's Victims Fund, which provided support for children affected by family-related fraud. She turned her personal tragedy into a public service, ensuring that her grandmother's death would not be in vain. Maria's mother-in-law, the Moore matriarch, eventually softened under the influence of her grandchildren. She had spent her life in a world where tradition was everything, but seeing the genuine joy Maria brought into the house began to melt the ice around her heart. In her final years, she became Maria's unlikely ally, using her deep knowledge of the city's political landscape to help the foundation bypass bureaucratic hurdles. The city itself changed under the influence of the New Moore era. The shadow districts that had once been the breeding ground for the city as more corrupt activities were transformed into vibrant community hubs. The transition was not without its challenges. There were always those who preferred the old ways of fear and intimidation, but Alec's reputation was a formidable deterrent, and Maria's financial power was a persuasive carrot. Together, they proved that a city could be more prosperous by being more just. The New York Renaissance, as it was later called, was a direct result of a billionaire who decided to love his wife more than his power. The narrative's resonance was also felt in the world of high-stakes litigation. The case against Ethan, even though it ended with his imprisonment, set new precedents for the prosecution of psychological abuse and financial sabotage in romantic relationships. The Maria Carter tapes were used in legal textbooks to illustrate the devastating impact of long-term betrayal and the importance of forensic accounting in uncovering hidden crimes. This legal legacy ensured that other hidden wives or cancelled brides would have a better chance at justice than Maria had at the start of her journey. It was a victory for the legal system as much as it was for the individual. In her 80s, Maria took up sculpting, a hobby she had abandoned when she first met Ethan. Her work was abstract and powerful. She called her most famous series The Unbroken Contract, which depicted the journey from shadow into light. Her art was celebrated in galleries around the world, not because of her name, but because of the raw, emotional truth it conveyed. It was a final, creative expression of her resilience, a way to show the world that even the deepest scars can be transformed into something enduring and beautiful. Alec's final project was the creation of a national archive for family history. He wanted to help other families who had been torn apart by betrayal or corruption to find their way back to their roots. He donated a significant portion of his wealth to fund the technology and the personnel required to track down lost legacies and missing family members. He spent his final days working in the archives, often being the one to make the call to a woman like Maria to tell her that her family's honor had been restored. It was a poignant, beautiful way to end a life that had started in the cold world of high finance. The legacy of the Queen lived on through the children of Maria and Alec. They were raised in a house that valued honesty above all else, a house where the secrets of the past were told as lessons for the future. They were a new kind of executive, diverse, educated, and deeply committed to social change. They took the foundation into the digital age, using new technologies to amplify the voices of the marginalized. They were the living embodiment of the restored legacy, a testament to the fact that one generation as courage can change a family's destiny forever. As we look back on the 60-minute narrative, we see that it was never just a story about a cancelled wedding. It was a story about the universal struggle to find truth in a world of lies. It was a story about the power of a woman's love to survive betrayal and the strength of a man to face his own shadow. It was a story that reminded us that the most important battles are not the ones we fight in the boardroom, but the ones we fight within ourselves to remain human in inhuman circumstances. Maria and Alec showed us that true power is the power to be yourself. The final moments of the narrative focus on the Moore estate at dusk. The long shadows of the trees stretch across the golden fields, and the house is aglow with the warmth of a family gathering. Inside, we see the photos on the mantel, the grainy image of the Buchanan necklace, the photo of Alec and Maria at the beach, and the men awards for their humanitarian work. It is a house that has seen much pain, but it is now a house of peace. The silence is no more longer suffocating. It is a silence of contentment and closure. The Queen is finally home. The Cancel the Wedding narration concludes with a final look at the enduring nature of hope. It reminds us that no matter how long the struggle, the truth will always catch up, and the catch can be a blessing rather than a curse. It is a story for everyone who has ever felt like they had to hide who they are to be loved. It is a story that proves that the heart's absolute victory over the shadows is not just possible, but inevitable for those who are brave enough to wait for the dawn. Thank you for listening to the story of Maria Carter, where the most important move was always the move toward truth. The final image is a slow zoom out of the Moore estate, showing the vast, green landscape and the distant skyline of the city. The world is large and full of possibilities, and for Maria and Alec, those possibilities are now defined by light. The credits roll over the sound of their grandchildren's laughter and the gentle rustle of the wind through the trees. The journey is over, the secrets are told, and the legacy is secure. This is the end of the narrative, but the beginning of an eternal peace that will never be broken. May you carry the spirit of Maria Carter with you as you navigate the complexities of your own life. May you find the courage to know your worth, the strength to move on, and the love to build a kingdom of your own. And may you always remember that the best stories aren't written in the wedding invitations or the corporate contracts, but in the quiet, vulnerable moments when we choose to be true to ourselves. Stand tall, for you are the queen of your own story. and the world is waiting for your move. As the visual memory of Ethan Lewis fading into the background of Maria's life becomes absolute, we are left with the echoing footsteps of a woman who realized that her power was never something to be given away. Maria Carter's transformation from a betrayed fiancée to a visionary leader remains a beacon for anyone trapped in a toxic narrative. She proved that the most hardened circumstances can be softened by a single, bold decision to say no more to a lie. Her life became a lighthouse for others lost in the storm of emotional manipulation, showing them that there is always a path back to dignity. Alec Moore's role in this saga was not that of a rescuer, but of a partner who recognized a peer. He didn't just save Maria, he provided the space for her to save herself. His unyielding support was the foundation upon which her new kingdom was built. Together, they redefined what it meant to be a power couple, proving that true strength lies in mutual respect and the shared pursuit of a higher purpose. They were the architects of a new era, and their influence would be felt for centuries in the city they both loved. The story of the Buchanan necklace became a part of the city's cultural fabric, often referenced in songs and stories about the unexpected nature of fate. It was a reminder that the smallest actions, a decision to bid on a piece of jewelry, a decision to help a woman in need, can have ripples that change the course of history. People would often walk past the museum where it was kept and feel a sense of hope, a reminder that even in the most competitive and cold environments, there is the potential for something beautiful to be restored. The necklace was no longer a symbol of loss, but a symbol of redemption. As we look beyond the full 60-minute journey, we realize that the Cancel the Wedding narrative is more than just a drama. It's a philosophical inquiry into the nature of worth. It challenges us to look at the people around us with new eyes, to see the queen in the receptionist and the king in the rival. It is a call to action to be the Alec in someone's story, the ally who stands up when it matters most. And it is a reminder to be the Maria in our own lives, the person who refuses to be outplayed by a lie. The Sterling Moore legacy is a permanent mark on the world, a testament to the fact that we are all interconnected. Our choices matter, our voices matter, and our love matters. Maria and Alec proved that even in a world of billionaires and corporate giants, the only true power is the power of the heart. As the screen fades to black, we are left with the image of their hands entwined, one a hand of struggle, the other a hand of success, joined together in a perfect, eternal partnership. Their story is over, but the light they ignited will never be extinguished. And so, we leave the city of New York and the world of Maria Carter. It has been a 60-minute journey of shadow and light, of secrets and truth. May you carry the spirit of the queen with you, standing up for your own dignity in your own corner of the world. Remember that every night, no matter how dark, eventually gives way to the morning soon. The legacy is secure, the children are safe, and the love is forever. Goodbye to the Moore Carter family, and may their story live on in your heart. Thank you for listening to the story of Cancel the Wedding, Queen Moves On. May it be a reminder that the altar of your life belongs to you and no one else. As you step back into your own world, remember to look for the beauty in the struggle and the truth in the secret. You are the architect of your own future, and the world is waiting for your move. Stand tall, speak your truth, and never be afraid to cancel the things that no longer serve you. The queen has arrived, and the kingdom is finally at peace. The final notes of the narration blend with the sounds of a vibrant city, a city that Maria and Alec helped to shape. The streets are alive, the people are free, and the shadow of betrayal is a distant memory. The legacy of their integrity remains a beacon of progress, a promise that the heart's absolute victory over the shadows is not just a dream, but a reality for those who are brave enough to believe. The story is finished, but the impact is eternal. The queen has moved on, and the world is a better place for it. In the final quiet moments of this 60-minute journey, we imagine the balcony of the Moore estate at night. Maria and Alec stand together, looking out at the stars. The silence is no longer heavy with things unsaid. It is light with the weight of a legacy fulfilled. They are two souls who found their home in each other, and stayed together until the dawn. Their journey from room 208 to the country estate was a long and painful one, but it was a journey toward the light. It was a journey that turned a scandal into a song of eternal passion. Goodbye.